Download. Save. barnercart. Spanner, not lane. Downloads. OpenCL zip. Unzip OpenCL. It's not a virus, right? So main file is cl.cpp. In that there's basically all the OpenCL functions implemented. Underneath of this there's a Mango library. In the main files, all implemented functions are just return other functions declared, find elsewhere to separate everything. Okay. So what exactly do you want me to look at? Or like you gave me a starting point, but what kind of feedback do you want? Maybe you told me already and I missed it. Why I went with Mint and Nix instead of NixOS? I want a working operating system, so I went with Mint. You gotta run? Okay, run. Off you go. We can talk about it some other time, or maybe not at all. I don't know. Probably not that important. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was about last week or something. I don't know. But I enjoy your stream, Big and Bot. Yipes. Just an overview? Okay. This doesn't make sense. You know this is going to be compiled to C++. I think. Is this supposed to be both C and C++? That's kind of odd. But anyway, both of these headers are available in C and in C++, so I don't know why you would conditionally include them. But okay. CL get device IDs. I don't see the point in doing. Oh, maybe. Maybe. Yeah, I don't see the. So. Create sub-devices. So how do we create a device? Create context. So let's let CL create context. Well, hold on. Let's look at CL create context with capital. So you don't so when you have your you have your CPP file over here. Your implementation is down here on the right, and your header file is on the left. When you have an implementation, it should match the header. You're not including CL API entry and CL API call, but you should. You're supposed to include those here. Well, whether it's correct or incorrect depends on what the macros do, but it's a safe bet to include them in both the header and in the implementation. I'm curious what they do. I'm curious what they do. CL API entry. Do you define that yourself? You do not. You do. CL API call. but you make them not do anything. Well, on Windows it's stood call. I don't know. Okay. Did you make this yourself? CL platform.h? This looks like something you wouldn't write. Maybe you would. Maybe you took it from somewhere else. If you took it from somewhere else, you should properly attribute. That's this OpenCL header file. Oh, so it's not yours? Okay, got it. In that case, I would make sure to have a README saying that you stole it. And you didn't give me that README. I don't know if that's just because it's incomplete. Like the package you gave me incomplete, but you should definitely include a README saying you stole it. So otherwise, people might think that it's yours and that, or you might think it's yours or something. I don't know. Make sure to attribute. What is with this knife stuff? I saw someone else use it. Is that like a new cheer badge? Looks pretty cool, but yeah. Of course, my chat widget, I haven't implemented it yet, as you can see, but okay, anyway, back to, so yeah, please include the CL API, whatever, and the CL API, whatever, that are in the header file. See, API entry and API call, make sure to include those in both the header and, well, if they're in the header, you need to put them in your CPP file. Okay. This was, so okay, this doesn't make any sense because you're saying if C++, then you have this C++ code. So this doesn't make any sense to put this if def. Don't put the if def. Delete it. And that also means that your .cpp file is definitely not going to be compiled as C. It's only C++. I don't know why you're doing this stuff. Just stop, because it has to be C++, otherwise it wouldn't parse. So don't check. I don't know why these functions are extern C. They don't need to be, I don't think. Also, I think you should put them in a namespace. Because they're supposed to be private to your library. And also it might just be less confusing if they're in a namespace to clearly separate them from the public CL interfaces. So let's look at the implementation for this. User data must specify a mango recipe. I don't know what that means. We get the PID, we get the process name by PID. Huh. And this. Oh no. Well, this is Linux specific. And it's not guarded with an if Linux thing. I don't know what Mango is. Is Mango Linux specific? Why do you even need the process name? Okay. Well, well, I don't. Why do you need this? Why do you need the command line? Wait, what are you pulling from the command line? You're pulling. Removing first two characters. But what if it's not dot slash? What if it's just slash? What if it's not? So, what? What? I'm confused at what this code is trying to accomplish. So it pulls out like it has a hard-coded limit for some reason. Is this trying to get the executable? If it's trying to get the executable, this is not the way to do it. I have no clue what mango is. Aside from being a fruit. OpenCL Mango Linux? This? Research Imaging Institute? Mango? Is it this? I don't care the license. What is it? This is a crappy user guide. Yeah, this doesn't tell me what it is. It's a crappy landing page. Multi-image analysis GUI? Is that what it stands for? Shouldn't F-read take F and... Well, it is taking F. The file comes at the end. So, yeah, that's right. Read, if you're using a read instead of F-read, it's the opposite, where the file descriptor comes first and the buffer comes after. If you're trying to get the executable, that's one thing. If you're trying to get the process name as shown by PS, that's a different thing. So I don't know what it's trying to do exactly, but it's reusing the name buffer. What do you mean? There's only... Oh, I see what you're asking. Yeah. It is reusing the name buffer. I'm aware of what OpenCL is. I just don't know what Mango is. Is this the Mango? If so, I can look at its documentation. Otherwise, I have no clue. I need a link to what the heck Mango is, so I can look at its documentation for what Mango init does. I like this use of the no throw new. A lot of people don't know about this. Allocating without throwing. Oh, the Mango web page is down. Ouch. It's weird that you're doing this, but you're calicking here. But you're calicking with a very small size, so this could be stack allocated. This whole function is very suspicious. Go to exit. What's wrong with go to? This is C++. We write go to, right? Because we don't have exceptions for whatever reason. Mango project U. Yeah, it looks down to me. Wump. Come on, archive. You can do it. So you're using a dead project? Is that what I'm hearing? Many core architectures for next generation HPC systems. Is there a documentation? Wait, do you implement Mango? I guess you don't. You don't like exceptions? Well, good thing you're not writing this code. You took it from Stack Overflow and you didn't attribute it? What is Stack Overflow's license? Creative Commons attribution share alike. Proper attribution is required. You're not respecting the license of the code you took. Not cool. And as a academic, I think you're an academic because you said, I think you said this was for school or something, or like a research paper. As an academic, you should know about citing sources. What's wrong with error values? Because you can't take advantage. Well, in this case, that's fine. Like, not having exceptions is not a problem here. But in some other cases, it can be a problem. That's not nice, Nikito. So I don't. So if you want the. So there's many issues with this. It says Linux specific, yada yada. I guess if Mango's Linux specific, that's fine. If you have, what was it? There's glibc. What you should do. So if you want. Dang it. I thought glibc had a whatchamacallit for proc_self_exe. So, okay, one thing you could do is instead of using a PID, calling get PID and then putting it in here, you can use self. So just self. Then you don't need the sprintf. That's one thing you could do. And instead of I doubt you want command line. But if you do, you can use getLine in C++. That gives you an std string. Now, maybe you don't want to use std string or something, but just use it. So you give it the file, you give it the string you want to write in, like the output string. You give it the new line character, which is defaulted, so you don't need it. So you'd write you just make the string, and then you say file name. If you're trying to get the first line, that is. Maybe make it explicit. And then if not file, handle error. Stream file. This would be proc self line. Oops. So if you want to, this is like the whole implementation. Maybe you want to make a copy of the string on the C heap if you really want, but this would be the whole function. if you really want to get the first thing in the command line. Now, the first thing in the command line can be manipulated. For example, all these things are manipulated. So if we look at crap, I'll just like, I need to turn off sudo password. Of course. I'm trying to hide it from the camera. If we cat commit, what? That's weird. Cannot reset. What? Maybe that's like a special process. Some processes can like change their name, and they do that by modifying. Maybe like this thing? No, that's defunct. Beautiful. Or like this thing is just Vim. It's not a full path. Or just instead of using command line, you would use exe. Exe is a link. I don't know why you. This function is the least important thing to the whole project. Okay. I guess I should focus on what matters to you more. Not much reason to not use SA string since it no longer needs the buffer for sprintf if you use it self-right. Not much reason to not use std string. Well, if you use std string, you can use getLine. So this is limited to 1024 characters. So if you have a file path longer than that, it doesn't work right. But this will work with any length file. Use it as the context name. Okay. Then I would use this. And if you're using it as the context name, I don't know why you're stripping out /. Actually, does file system have? I doubt file system has a way to get the executable. Actually, ns get executable path. Okay, so here's the right-ish way to do it. You would read proc self exe. That's a symlink. And the symlink points to the real file. So if you really want the file name, then use this instead. The file name of the executable, use this instead. This is sort of tested, it's not really hardened, but you could steal it from me if you want. I think this is better. Well, because I wrote it. Xclip. No, I don't want xclip. What do I want? I want this to go to my clipboard. Well, I'll just give you the whole thing. Let me give you this code. This is now under the public domain. That's a more robust version of what you have. You can delete the macOS version if you don't care about that. Anyway, on to the interesting stuff. So you make a new CL context, add devices, devices, and num devices. Add devices. Tempvec. Turn tempvec. Huh? This seems kind of silly. Not kind of silly, just a lot more work than it needs to be. So if you want to copy data from one structure to another, you use std copy. So devices plus num devices back in searcher of context devices. This is what I would do. I would do this instead of this. You'll already have a vector, so we can make a back inserter to it. The back inserter kind of does what it says. Whenever you write to a back inserter, it writes to the end of, it does a pushback. And we say copy from this range into the back inserter. This range being your devices array. I would do that instead of, we could do the same thing here in add devices. You would have, instead of this, you would do tempvec. So I guess this is what, this std copy is doing the same thing that this is doing. Actually, there's a better way. Because vector has an insert function that takes range. So you can do context devices insert. We're going to add it at the end of it because we have to add it somewhere because the vector doesn't know that it's empty. Devices plus num devices. And actually, we can construct the vector like so. I think, okay, in order of preference, I like these kind of equally. I'm not sure which one I like more. Copy is in third place, and your solution is in fourth place. Well, the copy can be kind of convoluted. But you could, like, there's already a constructor in vector that does, it takes a range and then creates a vector of that data in that range. So you can just use that. Well, there's many ways to do it. I think both of these are going to be the best. So copy, the problem with copy is it doesn't reserve ahead of time. But insert and construction do. What's going on here? Oh, everything's down except algo. Maintain bulletproofs implementation. Yeah, I don't know what that means either. Context mem objects clear. You don't need to have this line. I don't know if you're still around or if you decided I'm an idiot. barnercart. But this is not necessary because when you do new CL context, it'll clear the it'll make empty vectors for you. So clearing it doesn't do anything. So this is just purely redundant. You might say that CL context could take a parameter, take these two things as parameters, and then CL context constructor can populate devices, but I think populating as a separate step is also fine. I don't know. You're still here, but you also think I'm an idiot? You'll see that more. Okay. So we created the context. We did mango in it, but we didn't associate the context with mango. So if I create two contexts, will they try to call mango init twice and the second one would fail? Is it valid in OpenCL to create two contexts? I don't know what's going on here. Why isn't the OpenCL context, why isn't this associated with whatever mango init did? It seems like they should be linked together. This mango init is just like, I don't know. He says some global variables that aren't associated with context. I don't know. Seems weird. To be tested. But in this function, you don't do, oh, you call it create context. Yeah. Okay, well, so you had an example. Let's look through your example. Where's your main? So we got memory. So you'll get platform IDs. Let's not care. Get device, create context. And then create command queue. Command queue. Create command queue. So as far as, I don't think I commented on this. As far as having your seal.cpp, which implements this C interface, and having this call your stuff, that's a good idea. Having the separation between the public interface and your internal gut, how it works, is a good idea, I think. Sometimes it ends up being a one-to-one mapping, which can look kind of weird, but sometimes like here, it's not. So I think what you have here is good. I mean, I didn't look at all the individual lines, but the concept of wrapping it like this is a good concept. Why would you think that I'm an idiot? Because I kept going on about the getting the process name stuff. So create command queue. Context is null, invalid context. Device is null, invalid device. Yeah, and you create a new queue. So are you allergic to exceptions or what? Like, do you turn off exceptions explicitly? C++ exceptions? Or are you just not using them for whatever reason? Yeah, but you're a game dev, aren't you, Nikito? So Q context Q. Shouldn't we fail if there's already a Q for the context? Because it seems like a context can have only one Q. And all the devices can only have one Q. So I think you should fail if you create more than one Q for context. No, not just in using new. That's the only case I've seen so far where you don't use exceptions. But you wish you were game dev? Okay. Well, if you do it in your free time, I consider that to be good. As in, you're a game dev if you're doing it on your free time and you identify with that kind of thing. Yeah, so depending on how CLQ is implemented. So the vector will be empty after you new it up, but TGX will not be set to null. What I would do is I would set it to null in the header file. So it'll be cleared automatically when you new it up. What I would do, I don't know if you're going for C with classes style or if you are fine jumping into C++, like more. But if a CTX is required to be initialized and the device is required to be initialized, well, actually, it looks like you don't initialize device. Hey, you're not initializing device in your. Maybe you're not even using it. You use it here, but you're never initializing it. You're reading it. You're never initializing it. That's bad. So if they're required, like they are now, the way you have it structured makes it prone to forgetting to initialize it. So one thing that people do in C++ is they make constructors. Let me move it over here so it's not on my face. They make constructors, and they take these fields as constructor parameters, and then they initialize it like this: ctx device. So this makes a constructor for the CL command Q class. It means whenever you new it up, like here, you have to give it the ctx and a device. Well, in this case, the variable is called context. And then you don't need to initialize it context again, ctx again. And yeah. Have I used Ghidra? No. I thought I knew what it was, but I forgot. Sorry, I was just catching up with Schwat. So yeah, this is not needed. If we set TGX null here, we don't need it here. Yeah. And so that's create queue. Let's see what's next in the list. Create program with binary. There we go. That's going to be interesting. So CL, create program with binary. So that's the thing. That's the thing. So my comment about exceptions is, if you get an error, instead of having this pattern where you go to exit, you could throw an exception, or you can have an early return. So you can say error code ret and then return. If you do this, then when you call it in CL CPP, instead of, so you got the call, you're just passing the parameter, your error code ret parameter. You could do like error code and then like error code and then if error code ret is error code, and then return program. So you could make your wrapper a bit more complicated in order to make your implementation simpler. It's simpler because you don't need a null check here, because originally the wrapper gave it maybe a null thing, maybe it had a pointer to something, to a CL int. But if you make a local variable and pass that to the implementation, then the implementation can know it's not null, and then it could always unconditionally assign it in return. Well, here you would return something. I don't know what you would return. Where's your go to exit? Program? Return null, I guess. Well, I return program. I think it would be better to say return null explicitly, but if you could go a step further and delete the parameter and change this to a try catch. So this could be catch, I don't know, CL error E, and then E, do this, E dot error code. I don't know if you can read that. Let me close that. Return null. So you can make it, your implementation doesn't have that error code parameter, but it throws whatever error type, and then you catch it here. And the advantage of this is that you can catch things like std bad alloc. And if you catch bad alloc, you can set it to host out of memory, whatever it's called. CL host, I don't know. And then you don't need when you do placement new, you don't need to do placement new. Create program with binary. Where is that? Create program. So instead of doing the no throw variance, you could just use a throwing variant. You can delete this because you know now that program is not null. And you keep that error handling boilerplate inside of this wrapper. So here you would do like throw CL error of CL invalid context if you're going to do exceptions. It's probably a good idea to catch bad alloc and do this anyway. It's also a good idea to catch all exceptions and just return a generic error code, because otherwise exceptions might leak. Seal unknown error, whatever catch-all error code is. I don't know if I'm being clear. I'm kind of just half speaking right now. Well, 18Ace, can't you take the Monero implementation and make it a library? If it's open source, if it's free software, you can do that. So does this make sense? So I explained, like, you can use error code still, but make reduce the need for goto, or you can go full on with exceptions, and then you have even less code in your. Actually, here you would, if you go with exceptions, you don't need this error code ret. You don't need that no more, because you'll always throw when you get an error. This is only a good idea if an error is kind of uncommon, because current implementations of exceptions are kind of crappy. They're not kind of crappy, they're crappy. You don't want to be throwing every call. But you have to use error code returns. Well, you only have to do that for the OpenCL API. In CLCPP, yes, in order to adhere to the OpenCL API, you need to use error code returns. But in the rest of your application, you don't have to use that scheme. You can use whatever the heck scheme you want. It probably should be similar to how OpenCL works, because the whole purpose of your program is to adapt Mango and OpenCL. But like if Mango reports errors like Mango error, then I don't know. Then you could throw a Mango error, or you can, I don't know, it depends. Seems like you're not, like maybe Mango error gives you some details other than just failure, and you may want to communicate that up. And instead of writing a switch thing everywhere, you can consolidate the error handling in seal.cpp. So oh, my bad. I missed your other comment. Control Franzi is reverse engineering software. I think I was evaluating options for, I don't know if it was decompilation. There was a project that I was working on. I don't remember what it was exactly. Oh, I was researching. I wanted to do static analysis on x86. And I think that's where I stumbled upon Ghidra, and then I passed it by. It is what? 18Ace. It's tightly coupled with the rest of the code base. Well, then decouple it. Right? What? Let me see Ghidra. Why is this window so tiny? Yeah. I don't know what it is. It's a reverse engineering suite of tools. I think there was like one part of it that I was looking into, but decided not to use it. Because finding technical information in the sea of shitty blog posts by people notice. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as Skywalk said, you could be that resource. So one thing I noticed when I searched for mango error is you have this cleanup work. Usually you do this cleanup work in the go to the exit thing. Well, kernel function clear. Program kernel. This is weird. You're clearing the kernel functions and then you eventually delete it anyway. Deleting the program will delete the kernel function. It'll destruct the kernel function. So you don't need to clear here because you're already doing that here. So that doesn't make sense. And okay, there's an issue here where you're setting binary status of I, but you're not you're leaving the rest of the binary statuses uninitialized. Let's see. I don't how big is that array supposed to be? Is it supposed to be num devices? So here you're not initializing the entire array. You're only initializing the first one. I don't know if that's supposed to happen. And here, if like the third one fails and there are 5 devices, then you're initializing the first 2 things here, the things that succeeded, and then the third thing which fails, you're initializing that, but you're not initializing the rest of the array. And there's no way for the caller to know. So either you should initialize everything from the start, like at the start of this function, clear out binary status with like, I don't know, some error code, or this should keep going and try to process the rest of the binaries instead of exiting immediately. It's up to the client to initialize binary status? Really? That's a kind of unusual, but that makes sense. Makes sense that that might be the case. You're doing that thing where you clear things when you don't need to. Well, hold on. Depends on where temp kn is. Oh, it's up here. Because it's only accessed in the loop, I would put it inside the loop. And that means you don't need to clear it each round. Well, actually you never need to clear it, but this, if you put it inside the loop, then you're gonna avoid the situation where the loop iterations depend on each other accidentally. Because in this case, temp kn of iteration 0 can't interfere at all with temp kn of iteration 1. But if you have it outside the loop, then they could potentially interfere. Maybe not in this exact code, but maybe you change the code a little bit and then you introduce the dependency. Like if you append to buffers in and you delete this clear or something, I don't know. It's generally a good idea to keep the variables, the declaration of variables, close to where they're used, where they're initialized, and then where they're used. Device type. Same with device type. I would put that here. Also, this comment is redundant. Stores Mango unit type, that's what this says, of each device. Well, that's what it says in the variable name. So this comment is just repeating what the code says. The only thing that's particular is the each. But if you put it inside the loop, then it's obvious that it's each. So you don't need the comment anymore. Same with this thing. A lot of your comments seem redundant. It seems like you're a C programmer, or you're used to programming in C, or maybe your professor or something was mostly a C person. But you got some non-trivial, like non-C things like find, which is okay. So you're not like totally C, never used C++ before, but there's a lot of things that aren't normal C++ that look like C to me. You think that putting decorations after Goku gets a completion? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would be an issue, so don't use GoTo. What you're saying sounds right. Because when you do this GoTo exit, then if this variable goes out of scope, then C++ decides that it's potentially ambiguous of whether you want this to be cleaned up or not. So it just decides to not clean it up. So yeah, that's an issue. But you can solve that by putting that either not using GoTo or putting this into its own block, into its own scope. So then temp_kn gets destroyed at the closing curly bracket. And then when you go to exit, there's no temp_kn that it gets confused by. Got it. Okay, yeah, if it looks like it started as C and then some C++ got sprinkled in a bit. Computed GoTo. No, computed GoTo. Not here. Not for cleanup. Okay, I'll rewrite this in what I think is a more C++ style. And then maybe you can learn through the rewrite process or the end results. So we already did, like, let's assume we're going to do exceptions. So you'll do that. Throw seal error. That. Throw seal invalid value. That. I don't really know why this is that, but maybe that makes sense. I don't know. We got a new program. Here we would use make unique, probably. Reach device. Num devices, its type is CLUint. So I would imagine your compiler complains, but maybe it doesn't for whatever reason. I would use CLUint here to match the type of num devices. Device type is this. Here you don't need to write that. There you go. We don't need this scope because we're not going to use go-to. I'm going to delete your comments because I don't think they help. Device list, binaries, in out. These don't need to be cleared. Program, kernel functions, pushback. Okay, sure. Mango error. Well, we can do auto there. I don't know if I'm still on the fence about auto, but I'll just do it. If we don't get success, then so if we want to exit early, I would use a break. Well, binary status, seal success, context program, program context. That's suspicious. Does that mean a context can only have one program? Looks like it. And then program dot release. Then we don't need that. Oh, that's just style. And then here I would it depends. I don't know if I would do this exactly, but I don't like comments. This is roughly what I would do. So if I wanted to keep going, then I would say something like this. Maybe. And that lets it try everything. But if, well, there's an issue here. Well, to keep it as the same, I'll just let it abort early. Because, yeah, that's what I was doing before. So this is what I would do. So I'd well, I can't do that change because that's not your type. I thought it was your type. Or is this your type? Mango kernel function. Does auto ever fail? I don't know what you mean by that. Oh, it is your thing. So, whoops, not too far. program C++, just C with templates. Sometimes use virtual class to abstract an early table. C with templates is the templates are often the problem people have with C++. Could you use std span to iterate devices? Yeah, but I'm assuming they don't have span available because that's pretty recent. Auto can be abused, like every tool. If you do the same way if you're not annotating your types in Haskell. Sometimes Brenda makes it less readable, other times documents functionality. Please use it. Yeah. They're not. Auto in C++ just deduces, like, it takes the type of the right hand side and it does some decaying stuff. Like if it's a reference and you don't have auto ref there. This is like, the way it actually works is it uses template deduction rules. But basically it takes the type of the expression and then that's the type of your variable. It doesn't do any inference like after you use the, like you cannot do auto device type and then later do the assignment. You can't do this. You need to have something on the right side because that will be the type. The thing on the right side of the assignment of the declaration is decides the type. Templates are just Haskell run at compile time. No, templates are it's a dynamically typed language. How dare you say it's high Haskell? Auto can be used in function signatures, but it makes a template. Rust is not a nice middle point. I don't know if you were here when we were looking at 18 Aces Rust code, but for some reason we had to type the result of sum, like something dot into iter dot sum, sum. It didn't infer it correctly. Basically enforces what all Haskell programmers should do. Yes. I think that warning is turned on by default in GHC of top level. I don't see how you think templates are like Lisp or a scheme or something. Anyway, explaining the changes I made. One, I made all your error paths throw, which means that the go-to exit no longer happens, and the conditional assignment of the thingy never happens. And we deleted the parameter. And another change we made was, we didn't fully make it, but I made Mango kernel function have a constructor that takes 3 things, which are the things that are required. I assume they're required. I don't know if they are actually required. So go it like this. This might be worse because I assume device and binaries are both ints, and you can swap the order of the ints, and that could be a problem. And until C++ 20, you don't have designated initializers, and even if you did, then it doesn't work with constructors. But I think this is what most people would write if they're writing C++, something like that. Maybe even have this function call being done by the constructor itself. So then it would just look like this. But I'm not sure. That's more of like an opinion kind of thing. We're still pushbacking. We're still doing that. Here, you had a bunch of manual cleanup work. Like you cleared the vector, which wasn't necessary because it was going out of scope anyway. Or you were clearing this vector, which isn't necessary because when you delete program, it's already like deleting program clears it up for you. And then you manually deleted program. The way I got rid of the manually deleting program was I used a unique pointer here instead of a raw pointer. So a raw pointer, when the raw pointer goes out of scope, nothing happens. It doesn't run any code. When a unique pointer goes out of scope, it will delete the object. So by throwing here, it will automatically delete the object, the program object. So you don't need to explicitly delete it in your code. But that means that if you want to return the program, you have to make unique pointer not delete the object. And you do that by stealing the pointer out of it using release. If you just did .get here, if you did .get, then you're going to return the right pointer, but then immediately after you return, unique pointer is going to delete that object, which means you have a dangling pointer. But release will take the release function returns the pointer, but leaves in null in the unique pointer. So when the function returns, unique pointer will delete null, which doesn't do anything. So you want to make sure to have a release here. If you just did return program, you would get a compiler error saying that you can't return a unique pointer because the function return type is not unique pointer. It's a CL underscore program. So you will know you have to do something with unique pointer. And if you look at so unique pointer doesn't have many things because it doesn't do much. But it's got release, reset, delete. So the only things that give you a pointer or pointer-like thing are if you dereference it, it'll give you a reference back, and then you can get a pointer from that reference. But that's kind of awkward. You can call get, which returns the pointer, but doesn't change the unique pointer, or you can call release. So even if you don't know that you need to call release, some trial and error may land you in the right spot by just looking at the documentation. So the unique pointer is not too scary. Doesn't have too much going on as far as an API surface. Something like shared pointer is a lot more complicated. I don't recommend using shared pointer. Especially not in your case, but anyway, those are the transformations I did with this function to make it more C++-ish. More familiar with C++ programs. Maybe somebody in the audience can tell me I'm wrong. What kind of music do I like? I don't like music anymore. Templates are a functional programming language that favors techniques like cons, base lists, and recursion. But maybe you have a skewed lens from using it as a standalone programming language instead of for its intended purposes. Yes, it is that, but that's like saying that SQL is a Turing complete, whatever. But that's not its purpose. Historically speaking, languages like Haskell, Scheme, Miranda are based off the concept of computation by rewriting, same idea as templates. But the thing about templates is it's not just rewriting. You can't because of memoization. I mean, if you have infinite compute power and you don't care about API, then yes. But it's not quite that simple. I guess, well, if you have laziness, no. You still, yeah. Yes, that is how templates work, but it is, yeah, you know. So does my transformations make sense to, you gotta turn yourself off. It's almost 4 a.m. Yikes. Yeah, I'll send you this, and maybe that other one.